She carried water to a dying brave. By sunrise, a new horse and bow waited at her door. Before starting this story, I'd like to take a moment to ask for your help. If you enjoy the stories we share, please help the channel reach the goal of 1,000 subscribers. I'd be very happy if you could subscribe. Without further delay, let's dive into this emotional story. The sun hung mercilessly over the Chiricahua Mountains, casting long shadows across the desert floor, where Ayana knelt beside her grinding stone. The rhythmic sound of mesquite pods being crushed into meal had become her meditation, a steady beat that matched the pulse of life in their hidden canyon stronghold. At 19, she had learned to find peace in the small tasks that kept their band fed and their traditions alive, even as the world beyond their sanctuary grew increasingly hostile. The acrid smell of smoke drifted on the afternoon breeze, different from the familiar scent of their cooking fires. Ayana's hands stilled on the stone, her dark eyes scanning the rim of the canyon where their sentries kept watch. Something was wrong. The birds had fallen silent, and even the ever-present buzz of insects seemed muted. A horse's hooves clattered against stone, echoing off the canyon walls like thunder. Ayana rose swiftly, her cotton skirt swirling around her ankles as she turned toward the sound. Nalnish, one of their youngest warriors, appeared at the canyon's entrance, his pinto horse lathered with sweat and foam. Blood stained his buckskin shirt, though whether it was his own or another's, she couldn't tell from this distance. "The blue coats found our hunting party," he called in Apache, his voice carrying the weight of catastrophe. "Tarek is wounded badly. The others are bringing him, but—" His words trailed off, but Ayana understood. In the unforgiving landscape of their homeland, a badly wounded warrior often meant a dying one. Within moments, the canyon erupted into organized chaos. Women gathered medicines and clean cloth while men prepared weapons and checked escape routes. This had become their reality since the white soldiers began their relentless pursuit of the free Apache bands. Always moving, always ready to flee, always counting their dead. Ayana's grandmother Istas emerged from their brush shelter, her weathered hands already holding a water gourd and strips of willow bark. "The water must be pure," the old woman said, pressing the gourd into Ayana's hands. "From the sacred spring. If Tarek is to have any chance, he needs the water that carries the mountain's strength." The sacred spring lay a dangerous half-mile from their camp, up a treacherous path that wound between boulder fields and across exposed ridges. In peaceful times, it was a place of reverence and renewal. Now, with soldiers potentially in the area, it represented a deadly gamble. "I'll go," Ayana said without hesitation, though her heart hammered against her ribs. She had made this journey countless times, knew every handhold and hiding place along the way. More importantly, she understood what the old ways demanded of her people. Water was life, and sacred water could mean the difference between a warrior joining his ancestors with honor or dying in unnecessary anguish. As she secured the gourd to her belt and gathered her courage, the sound of approaching horses grew louder. Soon, she knew, they would carry Tarek into their camp, and she would need to be ready with the healing water that might ease his passage, whether to recovery or to the spirit world. The path to the sacred spring had never seemed so long, or so crucial. Ayana moved like shadow across the broken landscape, her moccasined feet finding purchase on stone worn smooth by centuries of wind and water. The sacred spring lay hidden in a cleft of rock where ancient Apache had carved symbols into the stone, telling stories of successful hunts and honored dead. She had learned to read these symbols as a child, sitting beside her grandmother while the old woman spoke of times when their people moved freely across this land. The climb demanded all her attention. One misplaced step could send loose rocks cascading down the canyon wall, alerting any soldiers who might be pursuing their wounded hunters. Every few minutes she paused to listen, sorting the natural sounds of the desert from any hint of human presence. A roadrunner darted between the creosote bushes below. Somewhere high above, a red-tailed hawk cried its hunting call. These were good signs. The wildlife hadn't been disturbed by intruders. When she finally reached the spring, Ayana knelt beside the small pool of clear water that seeped from deep within the mountain. The Apache believed this water carried the strength of the earth itself, filtered through sacred stone and blessed by the spirits of their ancestors. She whispered a prayer in the old language, asking the mountain spirits to lend their power to heal Tarek before carefully filling her gourd. The return journey proved more treacherous. Smoke now rose from multiple points across the valley below, and the distant sound of gunfire punctuated the afternoon air. The soldiers were still hunting, still destroying. Ayana forced herself to move carefully despite her urgency. Spilled sacred water would help no one. She had nearly reached the canyon floor when she saw him. Tarek lay propped against a boulder, his breathing shallow and labored. The other warriors had made it this far before his strength gave out completely. Blood soaked through the makeshift bandages around his chest, and his normally bronze skin had taken on an ashen hue that spoke of significant blood loss. His eyes were closed, but she could see the rapid flutter of pulse at his throat. "I have the sacred water," she called softly in Apache as she approached. Tarek's eyes opened, focusing on her with effort. He was perhaps 25, known throughout. Their band for his skill with horses and his quiet wisdom. Many of the young women had hoped to catch his attention, but he had remained focused on his duties as a warrior and provider. "Ayana," he whispered, her name barely audible. "The soldiers, they knew where to find us. Someone told them about the hunting grounds." She knelt beside him, cradling his head gently as she brought the gourd to his lips. "Don't speak now. Save your strength." The sacred water seemed to revive him slightly, bringing a bit of color back to his cheeks. "My horse," he continued, gripping her wrist with surprising strength. "She's hidden in the rocks above us. If something happens to me..." His breathing became more labored, and Ayana could see the life slowly ebbing from his eyes. "Nothing will happen," she said firmly, though she had seen enough wounded warriors to recognize the signs. "You're going to heal and ride again." Tarek managed a slight smile. "You always were the stubborn one, weren't you?" His grip loosened. "The bow. In my saddle pack. It was my grandfather's. It shouldn't be lost when the soldiers come looking." As Iwai. The sun began its descent toward the western peaks, casting the canyon in shades of gold and red. Ayana continued to offer him sips of the sacred water. With each passing moment, she could feel the weight of tradition and expectation settling on her shoulders like a heavy blanket. Night fell over the canyon like a dark blanket, punctuated only by the distant glow of fires that marked the soldiers' camps. Ayana remained beside Tarek, keeping him company through what they both understood might be his final hours. The other warriors had returned to the main camp to help organize their band's next move, but tradition demanded that someone stay with the wounded brave, offering comfort and bearing witness to his courage. Tarek drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes speaking in fevered whispers about his childhood, sometimes recounting battles and hunts with startling clarity. During his lucid moments, he spoke of regrets, horses he should have gentled, words he should have spoken to his sister before she married and moved to another band, a life he had planned but might never live. "Tell me about the horse," Ayana said during one of his clearer moments, hoping to keep him focused on something that brought him joy. His eyes brightened slightly. "She's a paint mare, 3 years old. I've been training her since she was a foal. She has the heart of a warrior, but the gentleness needed for carrying children." He paused, his breathing labored. "She deserves someone who will understand her spirit." As the hours passed, Ayana found herself sharing stories too. She spoke of her dreams of seeing the great rivers her grandmother described, of learning to read the white man's symbols the way she could read the ancient petroglyphs, of finding a way to preserve their traditions, even as the world changed around them. In the darkness, with only the stars as witnesses, these conversations felt sacred, like prayers spoken directly to the mountain spirits. Near midnight, Tarek's condition worsened. His skin grew cold despite the warm night air, and his pulse became irregular. Ayana knew the signs. She had sat vigil with her grandfather and two uncles, watching as the life slowly left their bodies. Yet something compelled her to keep trying, to continue offering him sips of the sacred water and speaking words of encouragement. "I'm not ready," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "There's so much I haven't done, haven't said." "Then don't. Go," Ayana replied, surprising herself with the fierceness in her voice. "Fight. Stay. Your horse needs you. Your people need you." Through the long hours of darkness, she maintained her vigil, periodically climbing to check on the hidden mare and retrieve items from Tarek's saddlebags. The bow he had mentioned was indeed a work of art, crafted from seasoned yew and decorated with intricate beadwork that told the story of successful hunts. His grandfather's medicine bundle hung beside it, containing the sacred items that connected him to his lineage and spiritual power. As dawn approached, painting the eastern sky in shades of pink and gold, Tarek's breathing grew more labored. Ayana held his hand, feeling the calluses earned through years of handling horses and weapons, and whispered the old prayers her grandmother had taught her, words meant to ease a warrior's passage to the spirit world. But something unexpected happened as the first rays of sunlight touched the canyon walls. Instead of growing weaker, Tarek's pulse seemed to strengthen. His breathing, while still shallow, became more regular. The sacred water, her constant presence, or perhaps the mountain spirits themselves, seemed to be giving him another chance. "Life, stay with me," she whispered as the new day began, not yet daring to hope but refusing to give up. Before continuing with the story, I'd like to take a moment to ask for your help. If you're enjoying this story, please help the channel reach the goal of 1,000 subscribers. I'd truly appreciate it if you could subscribe. Now, back to the story. The morning sun climbed higher, casting away the shadows of night and revealing the true extent of Tarek's recovery. Though still weak, he was undeniably alive, his wounds showing signs of healing that defied what Ayana had expected. The sacred water, combined with her steadfast presence and perhaps the intervention of the mountain spirits, had pulled him back from the edge of death. "You saved my life," Tarek said, his voice stronger than it had been since she'd found him. He struggled to sit up, wincing as the movement pulled at his bandaged chest. "The water, the vigil. You honored the old ways even when others might have given up." Ayana felt a flush of pride mixed with embarrassment. "I only did what was needed, what anyone would have done." "No," he replied firmly, his dark eyes meeting hers. "Not everyone would have risked the journey to the sacred spring. Not everyone would have stayed through the night when soldiers could have found us at any time. You showed the courage of a warrior. From their hidden position among the rocks, they could see smoke still rising from various points across the valley. The soldiers continued their search, burning Apache campsites and destroying food caches. It was clear that their band would need to move soon, probably deeper into the mountains where the terrain would make pursuit more difficult. "We should get back to the others," Ayana said, helping Tarek to his feet. He was unsteady but determined, the kind of stubborn strength that had kept the Apache fighting for their freedom despite overwhelming odds. "First, I need to show you something," he said, leading her toward the place where his horse was hidden. The paint mare emerged from her concealment at his whistle, her intelligent eyes taking in the situation, before stepping delicately down the rocky slope. "She's beautiful," Ayana breathed, admiring the horse's compact build and alert demeanor. The mare's coat was a striking combination of brown and white patches, and her dark eyes held the same intelligence Ayana had seen in the best Apache horses. Tarek ran his hands along the mare's neck, checking for injuries or stress from the long night of hiding. "She needs someone who understands horses, someone who can continue her training properly." He turned to face Ayana, his expression serious. "I want you to have her." "I can't accept such a gift," Ayana protested, though her heart leaped at the thought of owning such a magnificent animal. Horses were wealth among the Apache, representing not just transportation, but status and security. "It's not a gift," Tarek replied. "It's a recognition of what you did. You showed the kind of courage and dedication that deserves acknowledgement. Among our people, such actions have always been honored. As they made their way back toward the main camp, leading the mare and carrying Tarek's weapons and gear, Ayana felt the weight of tradition and expectation settling around her like a ceremonial blanket. Her actions during the night had marked her as someone worthy of respect, someone who could be trusted with responsibility and honor. The sun was fully up now, blazing down on the desert landscape with the promise of another scorching day. But for the first time in months, Ayana felt hope rising in her chest like the morning thermals that lifted the hawks toward the sky. She had proven something to herself and her people, had shown that the old values of courage and compassion still had power in their changing world. The horse moved beside her with graceful steps, already beginning to accept her as a new partner in the dance of survival that defined Apache life. Word of Ayana's night-long vigil spread quickly through their band, carried by the warriors who had found her and Tarek at first light. By the time they reached the main camp, a small crowd had gathered to witness their return. Elder women nodded approvingly as they saw the paint mare following obediently behind Ayana, while younger women looked at her with new respect and perhaps a touch of envy. Istas, her grandmother, emerged from their shelter with tears in her ancient eyes. "You honored our ways, granddaughter," she said, embracing Ayana tightly. "You showed that the spirit of our people lives on, even in these dark times." But the most significant moment came when Tarek publicly presented her with his grandfather's bow alongside the horse. The weapon was a masterpiece of Apache craftsmanship, its yew wood polished to a warm honey color and decorated with intricate beadwork that told the story of successful hunts and honored ancestors. For a young unmarried woman to receive such a gift was unprecedented, marking her as someone who had earned the respect typically reserved for proven warriors. "This bow has taken many deer and elk," Tarek announced to the assembled band. "It has protected our people in battle and provided food for our children. Now it belongs to one who has shown the courage to risk everything for another's life." The bow felt heavy in Ayana's hands, weighted not just with carved wood and sinew, but with the responsibility it represented. She understood that accepting it meant accepting a new role in their band's hierarchy, a position that came with both honor and obligation. As the morning progressed, practical concerns reasserted themselves. Scouts reported continued soldier activity throughout the valley, making it clear that they would need to break camp and move deeper into the mountains. The process of packing their lives onto horses and travois had become routine over the past months, but it never became easier to abandon places that had offered temporary safety. Ayana worked alongside the other women, but she noticed that her new status had already begun to change how others treated her. Older women sought her opinion on matters they had previously decided without her input. Younger women watched her movements, as if trying to understand what had transformed her from one of them into something more. The paint mare, whom Ayana had decided to call Ciala, meaning Little Star in Apache, proved to be everything Tarek had promised. Intelligent and responsive, she seemed to understand the gravity of their situation, moving with the careful alertness that all Apache horses learned to survive in hostile territory. As their band began the familiar ritual of departure, Ayana found herself riding beside the warriors rather than walking with the other women. The bow rested across her saddle, its presence a constant reminder of the night that had changed her life. She caught Tarek's eye as he mounted his spare horse, still moving carefully due to his healing wounds. "Where will we go now?" she asked, speaking low so their conversation wouldn't carry to the soldiers who might still be tracking them. "Deeper into the Chiricahuas," he replied. "There are hidden valleys there that the Blue Coats haven't found yet, places where we can rest and plan our next move." As their band began to move single file through the narrow canyon that would lead them to temporary safety, Ayana felt the weight of change settling around her like morning mist. The girl who had ground mesquite pods beside her grandmother's fire was gone, replaced by someone who had proven herself worthy of trust and responsibility. The sun climbed higher, burning away the last coolness of dawn and promising another day of survival in a land that had become increasingly hostile to her people. But riding beside warriors, carrying weapons earned through courage, and mounted on a horse that represented not just mobility but status and security, Ayanna faced the uncertain future with newfound confidence. Behind them, smoke continued to rise from the valley they were leaving. Ahead lay unknown challenges and the eternal Apache struggle for freedom. But the events of the past night had proven that the old ways still had power, that courage and compassion could still transform lives, and that sometimes the most unexpected people could rise to meet the demands of extraordinary times. The mountain, spirits had smiled upon her vigil, and now the path forward, though dangerous, seemed bright with possibility.